Okay, so sit yourself on a lift. Just come into a good cross-leg position so that you're feeling you're sitting evenly. So feel that you're sitting evenly on both seat bones and that the weight of the seat bones feels level. So just have a little moment to just wriggle about, just have a little wriggle, just make sure that you feel evenly placed. Just hold onto your knees and elevate the heart area upwards, drawing your shoulders down away from your ears. Just spend a few moments just focusing on long, slow, deep, deliberate inhalations. Long, slow, deep, deliberate exhalations. Just listening to the sound of the breath as it enters and as it exits. Release your hands, bring your hands into Namaste, press the palms firmly together, lengthen from your armpits into your elbows. And then close your eyes, allow your focus to draw itself into the breath. Filling the lungs evenly on both sides, emptying the lungs evenly on both sides. Soften your jaw by drawing the lower teeth away from the upper teeth. Feel as though you are inflating the lungs with energy, which of course you are. Filling the lungs from the bottom to the top, breathing into both lungs evenly. Gently draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude for something or someone or somewhere. Hold on to that feeling of abundance in the heart area, and then release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. And then as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Just hold on to your knees, lift up into your chest, elevating the heart area up to the ceiling. Take a deep inhalation in through the nose. And then with an exhalation, turn to the right side. Just feel where your spine is in terms of movement today. Just draw the abdomen across so that the belly button points at that right knee and beyond it. Turn the ribs and the shoulders, keeping the neck soft. Just looking forwards with the head rather than over the shoulder. Turning the abdomen and the ribs and the shoulders. And then come back to the center. Hold onto your knees, lift up into the chest. Take a deep inhalation and then turn to the right side, drawing your abdomen across your ribs, your shoulders, just acknowledging where your back is in terms of movement. If there is resistance, if there is freedom, just continuing to inhale from the bottom of the lungs to the top and using the out breath to intensify the turn. Acknowledging and paying heed to any spinal resistance. Just acknowledging the sensations of resistance and then drawing your attention into areas of the body that present non-resistance. And then gently come back to the center. Just hold onto your knees, elevate your heart area up to the ceiling, and then stretch your arms out in front. Really spread the fingers, spread the palms. So you feel the palm skin really spread, really stretch. Interlock the fingers right into the webbing of the hands. Turn the palms all the way out. Don't worry about cracks and pops, that's good. And then raise your arms over your head. Squeezing the outer elbows in, lifting the heart area. Take a deep inhalation and then with an exhalation, turn to the right side. Again, just acknowledging resistance, respecting that resistance, drawing your focus away from areas of immediate resistance while not ignoring them, of course. Just drawing them into areas of non-resistance so that it evens out the sensations of the pose. So that the resistance is still there, but we don't just wholly focus on the resistance. Come back to the center and turn to the left, drawing the abdomen across, the ribs and the shoulders, keeping the head just looking forward between the two arms. Just acknowledging the resistance, whether it feels different. Also acknowledging the weight of the seat bone. So have you leaned over to one side? Is one seat bone heavier than the other? Can you direct the torso upwards so that it's evenly placed between the two seat bones? And then release your arms. Swap the interlock of the fingers right into the webbing of the hands. Turn the palms all the way out. And then raise your arms up, lift up into the chest and turn to the right. Drawing the abdomen across the ribs and the shoulders. Using the out breath to intensify the turn. All the time acknowledging resistance, acknowledging how the feet play a role in this turn. And back to the center and then around to the left. And then gently come back to the center and release your arms. Just rest your hands, the backs of your hands on your knees, palms facing upwards. Just Acknowledge the warmth in the shoulders, in the neck, in the spine. Just take deep inhalations, deep exhalations, and then stretch your legs out, and then get a belt and throw the belt around your feet. You can have the feet hip width apart at this stage. If you find that the backs of your thighs are kind of stuck on the lift, then just shuffle forwards a little so that the backs of the thighs are free from the lift. It's just the seat bones that are elevated. Again, you can just roll over, just move that buttock flesh out to the side a little, just in case you feel like you're uneven, and then push your feet really firmly into the belt. So have the feet hip width apart. Press the shins into the floor. Tighten the kneecaps. Press the fronts of the knees through to the floor. Hit the fronts of the thighs firmly into the thigh bone, and then turn the thighs from the little toe side to the big toe side so that you get space in your hips. Roll onto the front edge of the seat bones, and then elevate your heart area up to the ceiling. So rolling onto the front edge of the seat bones is important. It's what helps to lift the chest. So just acknowledge the legs into the ground. Lengthen from the hip into the heel, pull in the toes towards the kneecaps, pushing the feet into the belt. Taking long, slow, deep, deliberate breaths, initiating the legs into the pose. So we turn the fronts of the thighs from the little toe side to the big toe side, turning the thighs inwards, turn the shins inwards. Activate the chest, lifting up into the heart area. So in many ways, if your arms were raised over your head, you would be doing dog down, Adho Mukha Svanasana shape. So it's the same action of the legs as we need in dog down. So turn the thighs, press the fronts of the thighs inwards. Feel that as you turn the thighs, it gives you space in your hips. If there's no problem with your back, then lift the chest and then just come forwards a little. If you've got back problems, then it's better to just stay at that first stage, just maintaining the lift of the spine just a little bit at a time, otherwise coming forwards. The more you turn the fronts of the thighs inwards, the more space you have in the abdomen to lift away from the legs, the more you can come forwards. But we come forwards with the heart area lifted, never coming forwards with the head, keeping the head attentive to the heart. Just breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Not going all the way down, we're just accessing the legs. So this is a little bit like uttanasana, isn't it? The standing pose where you reach down to the floor, but you reach down to the floor with a lifted chest. Breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. If you put your hands, the palms of your hands on the soles of the feet, it's like you're doing padmasasana, padmasasana even. And then gently release, come back to the center. Just bring your hands to the sides of the hips, lift up into the chest, elevating the heart area upwards. Just again, just acknowledging that quietness that comes over the brain as you come out of a forward bend. Just one more time, keeping the legs straight. Turn to the right side, digging the back hand into the cushion that you're sitting on or into the floor behind you, just to keep the spine elevated and lifted. As you turn, aim to keep the legs the same length. One leg will want to shrink, one will want to grow. So drawing the abdomen across. Come back to the center, lift up into the chest, and then turn to the left. Maintaining those dog down legs, dog down lift of the chest. Adho Mukha Svanasana legs. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, from the hips into the heels. And then come back to the centre. Come off your lift and then just come up onto all fours. So have the little fingers on the edge of the mat, the thumbs stretching towards each other. Push the air out from beneath the palm skin. Turn the toes under, have the feet as wide apart as the mat, and then come up into dog down. Keep the knees bent to start off with. The more you bend your knees, the more you can access the seat bones, elevating them up to the ceiling. Lifting the tailbone to the ceiling. And then slowly straightening the legs. Pushing your kneecaps into the backs of the knees. Lifting the fronts of the thighs up to the top of the legs, pushing the fronts of the thighs through to the backs of the thighs. Listening to the breath as it enters and as it exits. Keep your legs where they are, keep your hands where they are, swing your hips forwards, come up into dog up, turning the crease of the elbows to face the front, lifting the heart area upwards, keeping the head lifted, keeping the legs away from the floor. Tadasana-izing those legs, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards so the heels separate, lifting up into the chest. And then back up into dog down. And from dog down, again, just reactivating those legs, turning the fronts of the thighs inward so that you've got space in the hips to lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs. Breathing fully and deeply, listening to the breath. And then step your feet forwards, just come up into the standing position. And just have blocks for your hands, have your feet as wide apart as the mat, turning the toes inwards, stamping the big toes into the floor, stretching the little toes out to the side, lifting up into the chest. And it's the same activation of the legs, tightening the kneecaps, hitting the shins back so that your weight goes into your heels, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, but pushing the inner knees away from each other, and then lifting those inner knees up towards the groin so that you lift the insteps. Just raise your arms, turning the thighs, come forwards, hinging at the hips, and then just feeling the stretch of the backs of the legs. Bring your hands underneath the shoulders, beyond fingertips. Turn the fronts of the thighs inwards, lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs. So that's a mutually reliant action. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards and then lifting the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs. If you turn the thighs the other way round, then the seat bones get stuck. Lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs, project the chin and the chest forwards. And maintaining those Tadasana legs. Come down a little lower, then do, but not at the expense of losing the extension of the legs or the spine. Spend a little time to observe whether the activation of the legs is even in the left leg and the right leg. If you can reach down to the floor without losing extension, then do. If you can reach around the backs of your heels, maintaining that lift of the chest, then do. So keeping the legs firm. Last week we were really focusing on thighs, weren't we? So keep that action, keep the thighs turning inwards. Sometimes we turn the thighs outwards, but now we turn them inwards. True Tadasana legs turn inwards, hitting the inner knees away from each other, lifting the inner knees up towards the groin. Okay, and then release your hands down to the floor if you're holding onto your heels, and then bending your knees on the way up if you need to. Come up into standing. And then come into Tadasana, inner edge of the feet together. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, and then tuck the tailbone in without hitting the legs forwards. Lift up into the chest, lifting the hips into the armpits, turning the palms all the way out, spreading the fingers, spreading the palm. Breathing even deep inhalations and exhalations. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards the chest, and then step or jump your feet nice and wide, lift up into the chest. Turn your left toes in slightly, right leg and foot all the way out. So if you remember, for trikonasana, we activate the legs from the inside out because the chest is facing that way. If we turn the legs in, then it makes the hips want to come this way. But we want the hips to face the front, so broaden the inner thighs outwards, lift up into the chest, stretch into the arms, down into trikonasana, turning the chest up to face the ceiling, looking up. Keep that back leg really firmly activated, turning the thigh, lifting the inner knee up towards the groin. So turning the thighs outwards when the chest is facing forwards. Back to the center, swap the feet around, turn the right toes in, left leg and foot all the way out again, turning these inner thighs outwards, and then reach down, find the shin, turn the chest. So the pliability of the thighs is important for our poses. It helps to give us space in the hips. This sideways stretch maybe doesn't feel as natural in the hips as a forward stretch. So you've got to really turn the fronts of the thighs outwards to give your hips the space to side stretch. And back to the center, bring the feet parallel, and then step or jump the feet back together, coming back into Tadasana, lifting up into the chest, just observing the energy that you have released so far. Okay, get a couple of blocks for your hands for parvottanasana. So just acknowledge in Tadasana that your thighs are turning inwards. Your thighs are turning inwards, that you can tuck the tailbone in, but at the same time you can hit the thighs back so that there's a compactness around the hips. And then lift up into the chest. So in Tadasana, legs turn inwards. And the legs turn inwards because it gives us space to come forward. So just gently come forwards, turning those thighs inwards. Come forwards just as far as is comfortable, just being cautious if you've got a bad back. And then come back to the center. But then turn the toes all the way out. Keep the thighs turning outwards. And then very gently, avoiding this if you've got a bad back, just come forward. And it doesn't take long to hit some fairly significant resistance. So forward bending requires this turn. This sideways bend requires that turn. So sideways requires that way. Forward requires that way. So we're going to do parvottanasana, and that is a forward bending action. So we turn the thighs from the outside in. So lift up into the chest. Breathe even deep inhalations and exhalations. Bring your arms out nice and wide. And then step or jump the feet apart. And then this time turn the left toes in more steeply, much more steeply. You're almost trying to turn the toes towards the right foot. And then rotate on the heel of the right foot. Pick up the heel of the left foot, turn it out even more, so that the heels are in line with each other and the feet are almost in Tadasana. And then turn the thighs inwards. In turn, that helps you to broaden the back of the thigh from the big toe side to the little toe side, so that this back hip comes forward. So your hands on your hips, lift up into the chest, elevating your heart area to the ceiling, keeping that back heel firmly down on the floor. And then come forwards, hinging at the hips, and then reach down and find the blocks. At this stage, just reset the legs. So just feel where the hips are in 360 degrees. Just lift that heel, turn it out a little more, turn that back leg, the front of the thigh, inwards all the more. So then the hips will start to come level. Turn the front thigh inwards. And then you can pick the tailbone away from the backs of the legs, projecting the chin and the chest forwards. If you can go down any lower, then do. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, projecting the chin and the chest forwards. So the more you come down, the more the temptation is to kind of just drop the head down to the floor. But you got to keep the head lifted so that you project the chin and the chest forwards. If you can reach the floor, then do. But all the time, really focusing on the turning action of those legs. Projecting the chin and the chest forwards. If you can walk your hands back towards the back leg, then do. Just stay at the level that feels right for you. So again, I'm keeping the head lifted. We're not trying to drop the head down to the floor because you instantly start to round in the back. So keep extending forwards, extending from those hips that have space because we've been turning them in the right direction. Keeping your hands forwards in line with the foot. Bend that front leg and then step forwards and then come up into standing position. Come up into Tadasana. Turning the thighs inwards. Lifting up into the chest. Turning the thighs inwards. Tucking the tailbone in. So have the blocks on the left side of the mat. Just take a few deep inhalations and exhalations. Stretch your arms out, and then I'm kind of running out of ceiling height a little here. Step or jump your feet nice and wide. Turn your right toes in steeply, the left leg and foot all the way out, and then pick up that back heel. Turn it all the way out so that it starts to come from the thigh, not just from the heel. Turning the thigh inwards helps you to bring the hips level. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, lifting up into the chest. Lifting up into the heart area, up into the chest. And then reach down, find the blocks underneath your hands. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, finding levelness of the hips, lifting the backs of the thighs, seat bones away from the backs of the thighs, projecting the chin and the chest forward. Just a little bit at a time. Come down if you can, but or stay at the first stage. If you lose that projection of the chest, then come higher. Just work with the thighs, work with the hips to extend away. Maybe this side doesn't feel as free as the other. Maybe it's more free this side than the other. If you can walk your hands back, then do all the time, just paying attention to the feeling of the pose. So I feel more restriction on this side than on the other. So I'm coming into the next stages more cautiously, more mindfully. Okay, bring your hands forward and then bend that front leg, step the back leg forwards and then come up into Tadasana, lifting up into the chest. Just breathing, even deep inhalations and exhalations. Listening to the breath. Feeling that you can lift your energy from the feet, up into the legs, into the hips, up into the armpits, broadening the chest. And then just gently release, come down onto your knees. Bring your hands shoulder width apart, flat on the floor, pressing the palm into the mat, stepping back, turning your toes under, and then come up into Adho Mukha Svanasana, dog down. Lifting the thigh muscles up towards the tops of the legs, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards from the little toe side to the big toe side. So again, it's a standing forward bend effectively, isn't it? Like half uttanasana. Lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs. Breathing even deep inhalations and exhalations. Feeling that you can press the palms into the floor, not just bring weight into the heel of the hand. And then come down onto your knees, just sit back on your heels for a moment, just sitting back on the heels, lifting up into the chest. Just observing your energy, the lightness of energy around the shoulders and the chest and the head and the legs. And then staying on the seat bones, come forwards into Adho Mukha virasana. Pressing the palms into the floor, keeping the seat bones down on the heels if you can, turning the fronts of the thighs actively inwards. If you lose contact between the seat bones and the heels, then you can put a block or a folded blanket between the seat bones and the heels. Just hitting back into the seat bones. And bring your hands underneath your shoulders. Push your hands into the floor and then just come up into a seated position. So we're going to do rajakapotasana, the pigeon pose, which again is a really good pose for, we've been doing these turns to kind of free up the hips, the turns of the thighs rather than turns of the spine. We've been doing this turn of the thigh to facilitate the hip flexibility. This is a really good pose for hip flexibility. So come onto all fours, have your knees underneath your shoulders, have your hands underneath your knees, and then consciously lengthen from the knees into the toes, pressing the shins down, and just lift the chest forwards, almost like you're doing the cow pose. So if you were doing the cow pose, you would lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs, and then lengthen the abdomen to the diaphragm, to the collarbone, to the chin. So do the cow, and then tuck the tailbone in, draw the chin towards the chest, draw the back into a rounded action. For the cat, this is a shape that we tend to try and avoid, but rounding the back is a really nice way to just stretch out the vertebrae, and then come back into just the neutral position. So we don't want the cow, we don't want the cat, we just want a neutral position. Neutral position for the hips. Bring your right knee to make contact with the right wrist, and then bring the right foot over to the left, so it's sitting underneath the left thigh. So sit underneath the left hip, and then lengthen that left leg away. So at the same time, come up into the fingertips and then really tadasana-wise that back leg, turning that back leg from the inside out, again to give you that space in the hips. Although this is a difficult action, try and turn the bent leg thigh, try and turn that inwards slightly. From the little toe, try and stretch in the skin from the little toe side to the big toe side, from the outer groin into the inner groin. Lift up into the chest. Activating, especially that back leg, that turning inwards of the front thigh, so that the back thigh broadens outwards. It's the same as parvottanasana, the back leg. Lifting up into the chest. And then bring the palms of the hands down, turn your toes under, and then walk that left leg in, and then come back into, onto all fours. Just reset in the middle, and then this time bring the left knee to make contact with the left wrist, bringing the foot out underneath the right thigh and the right hip, and then stretch that right leg away, turning the thigh inwards, lifting up into the chest, turning that right thigh inwards, trying to turn this bent leg thigh inwards to a degree as well. A bit more tricky, but you could try and activate it. Lift up into the chest. You get a tremendous stretch along the abdomen. Lengthening into that back foot, lifting up into the chest. And then bring the palms down, turn the toes under, and then step that back leg inwards, and then come back onto all fours. Just sit back on your heels, and then just one more time, come into Adho virasana. Stretching out the back and the hips. And then just sit yourself back on your heels. And then come into cross legs. If cross legs prevents you from lifting the chest, then sit on a lift, sit on a cushion or on a folded blanket. Otherwise, just come into swastikasana, just straightforward cross legs. Or if you can do half padmasasana, you can come into half padmasasana. Just move the buttock flesh around, just make sure that you feel evenly positioned. And then hold your knees, lift up into the heart area. Just breathing evenly. Just in through the nose and out through the nose. And then with an exhalation, turn to the right side, digging the back hand really firmly into the floor to elevate the heart area upwards. And then come back to the center, hold onto your knees, lift up into the chest, elevating your heart area upwards. Take a deep inhalation. And with an exhalation, turn to the left. And then very gently come back to the center. Just stretch out your legs and then come down onto your back for supta baddha. So we've done lots of actions in the hip. And so supta baddha is a really good opener for the hips. If it's too strong for your hips, however, then put some blocks underneath the thighs. You can take your glasses off while you're laying down. Just have your hands on your lower ribs, push the heels consciously together. Just breathing, even deep inhalations and exhalations. Just listening to the breath. Allowing the breath to be soft, allowing the jaw to be soft. Stretch your arms up to the ceiling, interlock the fingers, turn the palms all the way out, and then lengthen your arms along the floor. If there's stiffness in your shoulders, you can put a folded blanket or some blocks underneath your hands or some cushions. Just stretch your arms away. Pushing the heels consciously together so that you create compactness in the hips. Release your arms up to the ceiling. Just swap the interlock of the fingers. Turn the palms all the way out. And lengthen your arms along the floor. Just focusing on the physical sensations of the pose, drawing your attention inwards. Acknowledge where there is freedom, acknowledge where there is resistance. And then release your hands. Just rest your hands on your lower ribs for a moment. Let the knees just fall apart. Just acknowledge the lightness in the arms and in the backs of the hands and in the fronts of the palms. That lightness of energy radiating out of the bones and into the hands, into the arms. And then just reach down, take hold of the sides of the mat, either side of your hips, and then bring your knees in towards each other, bend your knees into the chest, and then lengthen the legs up to the ceiling. Viparita, karanhi. Turn the fronts of the thighs inwards to give you that space in the hips so that you can keep the tailbone down, but then elevate the heels up towards the ceiling. So when you turn the thighs inwards, the big toes will be together perhaps, but the heels will be apart. Just breathing even deep inhalations and exhalations. And then bend your knees, bring your feet onto the floor. Pull your knees in towards your chest, just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom, just easing out any tensions in the hips and in the back. And then come up into a seated position, get a blanket, and fold it up into a pillow shape. Just come down along the centre of your mat, just guiding yourself right down the centre of the mat. And then allow yourself to release into the floor, just making sure that you're in a good straight line. Consciously let go of the muscles of the arms and legs, so that the body initially feels heavy on the ground. And then out of that heaviness, observe lightness radiating out from the bones and into the muscles and the organs. And the flesh and the skin. Use your in-breath and your out-breath to distribute that feeling of lightness evenly throughout the body, down into the tips of the toes, into the tips of the fingers, and into the top of the head. Just basking in that feeling of energetic lightness. And then wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers. And then bend your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom. Just a gentle massage on the spine. And then gently roll over onto your right side. Just stay down for a breath or two. And then straighten out the top leg, come back up into a seated position. Just final cross legs with your hands in the masti, just a final spinal lift. Just be conscious of the energy that you have released through your practice this morning. A good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy that the extensions and the forward bends and the twists, inversions bring to the body and to the mind. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Just spend a moment to acknowledge the positive energy you have created inside. And then send some of that positive energy out into the world. And then release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. So hopefully you feel as though you've really lifted your energy, giving yourself good energy to put into your day. So thank you very much for joining me.